Christy, I know that you were in the courtroom again today. Talk about that moment when there was the motion for mistrial. That was a really big kind of everybody holding their breath to see what Juan Merchan was going to do moment.
Well, so the lead defense attorney for Donald Trump, Todd Blanche, said, hey, there are things here that are new that we haven't heard before. And given some of this, we're getting pretty close to the line of whether this was consensual. You're talking about questions about their relative heights, how they're spacing, that she felt unsafe afterwards. And this is unduly prejudicial. We're far afield from falsified business records, and this is just too prejudicial to the jury. You can't unring the bell here. The jury has heard it, even if you give them some kind of limiting instruction, and therefore there should be a mistrial. And the state's response to that was, this isn't new. A lot of this testimony, she has told this story before. She's spoken about being intimidated before. I mean, her story is her story. And, so it's not something that you can necessarily sanitize. And actually, to your point, Katie, I thought a lot of the details that she gave really lent it credibility, because the defense's opening, he says she's lying. This encounter never happened. Well, she has so many details down to the color of the tile, what was in his toiletry bag, things that he said to her, really kind of, creepy stuff about his daughter, trying to tell her, you can be on The Apprentice and you can do well. You can't be underestimated, just like my daughter is blonde and smart and beautiful, and she can be underestimated too. This would be really good for your career. I mean, it was so detailed and so creepy that, you almost felt like you could see it happening. And I felt that really lent her a lot of credibility, and it's hard to sanitize her story. So the judge said, no, look, I agree. The judge agreed some of this could have been left unsaid, but also said to the defense, you weren't really objecting to a lot of this. In fact, the court at one point objected on his own and said, some of this needs to be stricken. So again, a lot of that responsibility was on the defense for not speaking up, for not going to sidebar if they thought things were going too far. So I think he was right to say there is no mistrial here. This was fair game, but it certainly went very close to the line of whether or not, this was something that she really consented to. At one point, she said, when she was asked if she said no, she said something to the effect of, well, I really couldn't speak. It was just, it seemed like it was just if this story had gotten out at the time, it would have been damning. I really do think it would have been very damning to his campaign to hear a woman speak about an encounter like this in the way that she did.
Molly, to Christy's point, there's a reason why Trump didn't want this to come out. This was coming on the heels of the Access Hollywood tape. And I've always talked about the timing being so important. If everybody who's tuning in will remember, that Access Hollywood tape comes out, people are really panicking and scrambling at the Trump campaign. And that is the reason why Michael Cohen, in the end, ended up having to scramble on his own to go create Essential Consultants LLC, open that bank account, and pay Stormy Daniels to make sure that she didn't speak before the November election. But Molly, I want to stay on this idea of Stormy Daniels as a victim. Now, this is not a case about Stormy Daniels being assaulted or anything like that, right? This is a case about falsification of business records. But there is an important component of this, which was during jury selection, both sides, but particularly the defense, wanted to get a jury that had not really heard anything about Donald Trump or knew a lot about Donald Trump or what was going on in this case. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't know about E. Jean Carroll's defamation case, right? The verdict, everything that happens. Do you think that the jury is in the back of their mind also thinking about everything that's happened to the other alleged victims of Donald Trump and sexual assault and all of those other ideas?
Yeah, I went back and reread the piece that Olivia Nuzzi wrote in New York Magazine about this case and about Stormy. And she says she didn't say no, but she didn't say yes either. And again, this is not the same as the E. Jean Carroll case, but it is certainly, it goes to this sort of treating women in a way that is not okay. And she talks about how she just sort of decided she would let him do it. And that is, if you remember, you had this Access Hollywood tape, and then you have her, and then you also have this other woman who had a 10-month-long relationship with him, Karen McDougal. So it wasn't just this one story. They were trying to stop a flood of stories from coming out. And I think that's a really important point. But yeah, I mean, I think this is really relevant. And I think that it fits a pattern that we've seen with Trump. And by the way, I mean, this is not admissible in court, but remember how many allegations there were before the 2016 election. I mean, this is not one person or two people or even 10 people. This is, I think the number was somewhere, in the dozens. And so I do think that this is really relevant, and it speaks to a certain kind of behavior, which is pretty beyond the pale in my mind.
So part of why we're doing these YouTube live streams is that we can actually hear from you, the viewers, and that is the reason why we invite you to drop questions. And so for our group right now, we have a viewer question from Melissa. Great question. Christy, this one's to you. Why did the judge set parameters around Stormy's testimony? We do know, Christy, that there were some pretrial motions that were litigated and the judge ruled on what could be testified about. But why would the judge actually set parameters around what she was able to tell the jury?
Well, I think the judge did want to make sure that this did not become unduly prejudicial, right? The elements here are about falsifying business records to commit another crime. Here, that other crime can be election law or tax law or federal campaign finance law. So the actual particulars of this encounter, other than the fact that it happened and that it was thought by Donald Trump that this would have been damaging to his campaign, that's what's relevant about this, as opposed to the details of whether or not, this was consensual. And, that piece is not a factual issue that the jury is supposed to be dealing with. So I think the judge really trying to make sure that this is that what the jury is hearing is what they actually do need to hear. So one example of this was during the course of the questioning, there was questioning about the actual sexual encounter itself. And Stormy Daniels started to testify about different sexual positions. And at that point, the judge said, no, we don't need to get into that. This is actually not only prejudicial, but kind of embarrassing and not really, probative of really anything that's relevant for the jury's determination. So things like that are just, not what the jury needs to be focused on and really kind of, more salacious, embarrassing, prejudicial, would make the jury think ick rather than actually focus on the evidence or dislike Trump. I mean, those are the kinds of things that the judge was really trying to keep out and keep this more streamlined. That said, there weren't a whole lot of objections from the defense, so there were a whole lot of details that came in today.
Okay, so we've got another question, and it's coming from Brad. But Brad, we're just going to put a really quick pin in it because we're going to bring in Hugo Lowell, who was inside the courtroom today watching everything that was going on. Because Hugo, Christy Greenberg just talking about how absolutely embarrassing a lot of this testimony would otherwise be for someone else. You need to give us some color, my friend, in terms of, did Trump look embarrassed? Did Eric Trump, sitting there behind his father, look embarrassed when he heard what was going on with his father greeting Stormy Daniels in satin pajamas and then trying to, woo her in some creepy way?
Yeah, Trump was really engaged today, and he seemed kind of visibly pained at a lot of the testimony. It was actually interesting on a number of levels. When Stormy Daniels first walked in, again, Trump was very attentive and watching her kind of take the stand and then kind of be sworn in, and then he was kind of watching the monitor in front of him very, very closely. There was a particular moment during the testimony that he kind of aggressively shook his head and he almost kind of winced, and that was when Stormy Daniels recounted how they were alone together in the Lake Tahoe hotel room, and they kind of came across a photo of Melania, and she goes, "Oh, Melania is really beautiful," and Trump says something to the effect of, "Well, it doesn't matter, don't worry, because we don't even sleep in the same room." And when she relayed that to the court, Trump kind of really aggressively shook his head and leaned over to Todd Blanche to say something. So I think this was a particularly painful day for Trump. It was an interesting day for Eric Trump. He was kind of sat 2 rows behind his father in the courtroom in one of the pews, and he spent considerable amounts of the trial looking kind of over his shoulder at the wall, rather than anywhere else. And that was kind of interesting. And we had a very close look of him because there's a camera angle. I was in the overflow room of the basically the defense side, the defense table, and kind of people behind Trump.
Adam Parkhomenko, why do you think it is that we've only seen Eric Trump of all of the Trump family members? He's the only one who has come to court, quote unquote, in support of his father. We haven't seen any of the other children. We haven't seen Melania. I don't know if Melania would have welcomed coming to court today to hear what happened, but in some way, though, wouldn't have been pretty interesting if Melania did come to court today to show support for her husband, even on a day when there was Stormy Daniels' testimony.
Yeah, I mean, I think your point of her absence obviously speaks volumes. I'm not entirely sure why Eric. I mean, I've also seen the reports out there that Trump is going to be skipping Barron's graduation and going to a fundraiser, which is not why the agreement was made to postpone that day. So it is yet to be seen who else shows. I have no idea what Eric's doing, but the color that Hugo was sharing in real time with him staring at a wall, I just had this kind of picture of Ralph from The Simpsons in my head of, him just glaring there for an hour or so.
So we're also going to bring in now Dave Ehrenberg. He is a great voice. He's the state attorney for Palm Beach County and always one of our spectacular voices on MSNBC when it comes to legal analysis. Dave, there was a question that was posed by Brad, one of our viewers. And so for those of you tuning in, please drop those questions in the chat. We're going to get to them, I promise. Brad wanted to know, why did the defense move for a mistrial? We actually covered that ground a little bit with Christy already, but why did the judge throw it out? Or more accurately, I guess, why did the judge deny that motion for a mistrial, even if Dave Mershon said that there were concerns that perhaps Stormy wasn't a very, easy witness to corral in, and maybe she did say a little bit more than she should have said?
Well, you used the word little bit. It was a little bit more. It wasn't enough to just end this trial, and defense lawyers are always asking for a mistrial. And Christy brought up a good point. If a lot of this stuff was so horrible, then the defense lawyers would have objected more. It was the judge who actually had to step in and say, hey, you're going too far. And that was the one thing that I was worried about as a prosecutor, thinking maybe the witness here gave Trump a little sympathy he didn't deserve by talking about things that really were unnecessary, like spanking him with a magazine, the silk pajamas. I mean, you could have discussed the details of everything that shows that this is a true story without getting that far afield where the judge is going to say, hey, enough. And so that's the only part I worried about with the testimony. But the prosecution tried. They just can't at all times totally control a witness like this who's used to having her way and talking freely. And she was talking fast because she was nervous. So I thought the prosecution did as well as you could expect in this situation. But overall, I think this was a positive witness for the state, even though she did give the defense a few things. Like, you never want to have your witness admonished by the judge. That was good for the defense. But overall, I think she put everything in perspective and was took a few steps towards a conviction at the end of the day.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I felt like the fact that she was nervous, she was speaking quickly. I mean, I speak quickly, so it doesn't mean you're always going to be nervous, but I felt like that made her more human. That made it seem like she was really nervous to be there. It wasn't, despite the fact she's a film star and she directs, and somebody suggested on our network earlier that maybe that was a deficit or something that's to her detriment. I felt like that made her seem more credible. The fact that she had all of this information. And I guess, Christy, I'd bounce this question to you then. There's only two people in that room. It's Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels. So there's really only one person who can refute what she said, right? And how she described it. And that's Donald Trump. Is there enough so far there that you think Donald Trump is now going to take the stand in his own defense?
I mean, he would be an idiot if he did. There's just too much, too many lies, too many documents, too many things for him to be confronted with that he doesn't have good answers for. But it's so interesting that you say that about, the fact that she was nervous and how that presented, because the first line of questioning on cross-examination was about the fact that Stormy Daniels was rehearsed, that she rehearsed her testimony, which of course there's nothing wrong with preparing a witness for the questions they're going to get, but nothing about it felt rehearsed. I mean, it was just a very odd line of cross-examination to start with, when she really felt like she was just so nervous that in fact she was giving answers that the prosecutor was not expecting. And that's why you saw the prosecutor then start asking many more leading questions, kind of leading her to what the answer should be, so that it would be more of a yes and no or no answer, so that she wouldn't kind of go more far afield and provide more details than she had to. Like, you saw the prosecutor trying to kind of rein this in. It really did not come across as rehearsed or calculated at all. It came across as somebody who was nervous and authentic and really, I think, trying to answer even more than the question that she was being asked.